to a very special edition of Radio Misfits Presents Pugs Moran's High Noon Rant. I don't know what it's the High Noon Rant. I do it every Monday through Friday, noon till whenever. Having a little bit of an ear issue here. All right. How's this? Is this better? This is better now. All right. We're doing this live today, Sunday evening in the bitter cold of North Texas. Temperatures. What are the temperatures? 15 degrees. Says right here in beautiful, balmy Highland Park, Texas. 15 degrees. Why are we gathered here on this very special of days, at this very special of time? It's because, unfortunately, the Dallas Cowboys... All right, so here's what some of you who check out the Monday through Friday show know. You know that I love football. I love the sports. Hold on, we're still trying to fix this. 1, 2, 3. Is this better? This sounds better, but then this sounds worse. That's too loud. Hold on. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of Cowboys breakdown for you today. We're going to have some friends stop by. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to come together as a group of individuals who have just suffered a trauma. And that was a trauma. The Cowboys losing to the Green Bay Packers by a score of 48-32. And don't get yourself twisted. It wasn't that close. It was 48-32. That's almost respectable. That's almost, you could almost, like 20 years from now, when you're having an argument with your grandchild, he'll be like, it wasn't that. You'll be like, no, it was pretty bad. I was there. I remember watching it. So we're all going through this right now. Let me get the chat room up and running. Hold on. Let me see who we got here in the chat. We are very boom. I'm going to marry the chat. There you go. Now everybody can see each other. Hi, chatters. Here's how we can get started. Why don't y'all just hit me up with your quickest Cowboy take? Just one word or whatever. I don't care. Whatever. And how you feeling about the Cowboys? And trust me, this is going to be a sharp right turn or left turn, depending on who you are. It's going to be a sharp turn for probably how you felt at, say, I don't know, 2:59 this afternoon. First, let me tell you a little bit of where I'm coming from, because I'm going to say some things that might anger some folks, especially some diehard Cowboy fans. But maybe after this collective trauma that we've all just suffered through, maybe now is the time for us to listen to each other when we talk about some things that need to be said, some things that have never been said about the Cowboys, because seriously, this town sports media is so in the tank for the Cowboys and Jerry Jones, with the exception of the ticket. But even them, see, here's the problem with the guys on the ticket. They are not beholden to Jerry Jones. They're not like the guys on the fan. The guys on the fan's got to watch what they say. Couple of really great dudes over there who do an incredible job of walking that tightrope. But you're never going to get any kind of real hard truths about the Cowboys from any of those people. Probably get it from Reiner over on The Freak. He'll probably give you some hard truths. But again, here's where I'm coming different than these people. I'm an adopted Cowboy fan. I grew up in Chicago. I'm a Chicago Bear fan. One of my earliest football memories is hating the Cowboys because it was the first time my Bears had ever made it to the playoffs. And who did they run into? That damn buzzsaw of a Roger Staubach, Tony Dorsett, Tom Landry team. So, from a very early, I was very resentful of the Cowboys. One of my favorite games of all time is the 1985 Bears 44-0 destruction of the Cowboys in that 85 season. Then I moved to Dallas. And I sort of embraced the Cowboys because I was no fool. I was already seen as a carpetbagger from the Midwest, so who the hell was I? So I tried, and I became a Cowboy fan. It wasn't easy back in those days. Them's was the Quincy Carter days. So anybody who wants to challenge what I've been through as a Cowboy fan, you can at least give me the respect that you would show the average 24-year-old Dallas Cowboy fan. Because I go back to Quincy Carter as a fan. Drew Henson. I remember Tony Romo when he was still just a guy they confused with the dude who ran the rib joint. No, not Tony Roma. Tony Romo. Yeah. And then I took a job with the Cowboys radio station, and I had to actually host Cowboy pregame shows. We did things from out in the stadium. We tried to create a show with the players' wives. I think we did 1 or 2 episodes of that. So I was in the tank. I hosted a number of Cowboy draft parties for various stations around town. I became a Cowboy fan. But again, different than what all the other people here in this town who are Cowboy fans, I do not have it in my bones, okay? So maybe I don't have the blind spots that other people have. Because honestly, I'm just tired of being pissed off. I'm tired of looking like a fool to my friends in other places because, oh yeah, he's a Cowboy fan now. He likes the Cowboy. You know, they always blow it. Not this year, boys. Not this year. This is our year. It's Super Bowl year. And this is how I imagine a whole lot of us felt about 3 o'clock this afternoon, right? We're like, it's Super Bowl or bust. This team is humming. This D is going to play for Dan Quinn. Now I have a 14-year-old purebred, raised in the dirt Texan. He's 14. He loves football. He is a diehard Cowboy fan. Some of my fondest memories of the past 10 years is watching my child, my little boy, in his, whatever it was at the time, a Romo jersey or whatever, sitting there as a little kid, just being dazzled by football. I became a deeper Dallas Cowboy fan in those moments because my son, he is incorrigible. I have not spoken to him yet. Not spoken to him since very early in the game. He is devastated, and that devastates me. But I can't say the things that I want to say here about the Dallas Cowboys to my kid, but I can say it from a standpoint of someone that doesn't have the bias of, a diehard fan. And I understand that. I am so biased towards the team of my youth, which is the Chicago Bears. I am absolutely delusional when it comes to what we can. And that is also how most Cowboy fans are. I'm a Cowboy fan who is not like that. Because again, my fandom doesn't rest on the shoulders of my grandfather and his father, So we're going to have some real hardcore Cowboys post-game talk. And I'm going to bring in my friend E, who is also a bit of an adopted Cowboy fan.
Adopted is correct.
He doesn't have it in his bones. It's not in your bones.
Bills first, Cowboys second.
Okay. So the reason that I wanted to have you here with me is because you are a Cowboy fan, and I am a Cowboy fan. We don't have it in our bones. So maybe we, in losses like this, we don't take it quite as deeply and as personally, but we still get pissed. I was explaining how I get pissed because now I'm embarrassed in front of all my friends who have heard me chirping about the Cowboys for the last 8 weeks. And yet again, they've completely embarrassed us, the Cowboy fan. We'll get into why. We'll get into what's next. We'll get into what we saw in today's game and what we think happened. And I'll start with E. What do you think happened out there today?
I think they went in overconfident. I think they let the home field record get into their head. And I think they looked really tight.
Tight all over? Tight anywhere in particular? Because I have to tell you this. That defense sucked. That defense lost this game for the Dallas Cowboys. People want to blame Dak. They want to blame CeeDee, maybe even Mike McCarthy, because you can blame the glamour position. But as a unit, as a whole, that defense gave up. And I believe it's because of Dan Quinn. I believe Dan Quinn being talked about, and he's leaving, and this is going to be his life. I think they gave up on their carpetbag in D.C. And it showed.
See, I think as a professional, when you're cashing checks the size that a lot of the people on that defense are cashing, you cannot quit regardless of your feelings of, where's Dan Quinn going to be next year? I think professional integrity of yourself and the way that you practice all year long, when you get to the playoffs, that's what you did the whole season for.
I think that sounds very reasonable, and I've heard it in a million press conferences, because that's the intellectual response, the human response, the emotional response, the I'm angry at this guy. That cannot be measured or governed by a paycheck. I believe that these players bought in hard to Dan Quinn, as a man, as their coach, as the guy who created this defense. And this was a hell of a defense. That's why Dan Quinn is so in demand. This was a good defense. And what changed? What changed is that everybody pretty much acknowledged that Dan Quinn is walking away from this team. And I believe that showed in the defensive performance today.
See, and I don't know. I look at what happened to them defensively, and not because I'm a Bills fan before I'm a Cowboys fan, but what happened to them defensively when they played the Bills. I mean, the Bills stomped that defense. I mean, it wasn't close. It resembled this game pretty much again today, and I think they ran into a good offense with the Bills and a good offense with the Packers. I think the Packers were underestimated in terms of, look at the game Aaron Jones had. I mean, 3 touchdowns and he ran like a wild man.
Look, as a diehard Bear fan, as a guy who watches every snap of Chicago Bear football, I've seen my fair share of Green Bay Packers this season, and I've seen them last year. I know what the Packers are doing. This is why on January 11th, I posted on Twitter, Facebook, all of them. The Packers are going to beat the Cowboys. And I knew this because I had seen almost maybe 4 of the last 6 games of the Green Bay Packers where they were dominating. And I am a guy who, with every fiber of my bones, and you know this, I despise the Green Bay Packers. They are my mortal enemy as an NFL team. But they're good. And I saw that because I saw what they did. I know that my Bears team was playing at a level that was really encouraging for a team that is rebuilding. And I watched them go up against this Green Bay team 2 weeks ago. And I was like, whoa, this is like the Brady Patriots. Jordan Love is a freak show. He may very well be. We saw some of the throws that I've been seeing for the last 6 weeks. We saw them today, those effortless wrist flicks for 40 yards to a wide open man. We've seen those. I think Jordan Love, saying it here now, might be the best pure passer in the NFL, and we'll see it over the next couple of years.
I'd tap the brakes a little bit on that, but he definitely was impressive today.
You should have seen some of the throws he made against my team 2 weeks ago. It was just ridiculous. We were all talking about Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott as an MVP candidate. Do we still feel that way? How much of this are we putting on Dak?
I mean, I think you got to put one of the pick sixes on him.
Yeah, for sure.
There were 2. One got called back for a penalty, but I think definitely one of those pick sixes has got to be put on.
Now, are you talking about the first one that was called back that was Jair Alexander, or the other one, the second one, which was Darryl Savage? That was the one across the middle. Which one are you talking about?
I think that one, the Darryl Savage play.
You think that was his fault? I think that was a bad throw. That was a throw, but what Dak was doing was what Dak was able to do all season long, which is throw guys like CeeDee Lamb open. He was trying to throw him open. And let me tell you something. That play, I say, is on CeeDee Lamb. Look at it. I took a picture of it. I didn't tweet it yet, so I can't share it. But there is a freeze frame where the defender is making the break on the ball, and CeeDee Lamb is pulling his hands in and buckling up like he's afraid to take a shot over the middle. This is 2024, okay? This isn't Lynn Swann and John Stallworth going over the middle in 1978. This is a different league. What you got to contest those plays. You can't make that easy for that. CeeDee Lamb all day long, there was something wrong with him. Did you notice that?
I didn't feel like there was something wrong with him all day long. I felt like he was the CeeDee Lamb that we see. I just don't think there was the effective. He was not as effective catching that one ball or making that huge play. I think he got used and he caught quite a few balls. But I don't think he had that game-changing play. Now, it's tough to change the game when you're down by as far as they were down. And I think it's also tough to not focus on CeeDee Lamb or at least cover him somewhat short.
He played like a diva. He played like a diva today. That's what I noticed. And there was jawing back and forth between CeeDee and Dak a couple of times. I don't know their body language, so I don't know, how serious it is. Friends, especially on a team together, sometimes they get into it. They didn't look like they were on the same page early. They fixed that a little bit, but if I'm being honest, they fixed that against second and third string Green Bay defenders. Green Bay had almost essentially benched their defense in the fourth quarter.
True. And the other thing that, and I don't know if this irritates you or not, but it did seem like in the third quarter, a few times when he caught the ball and he got up and he did that first down motion, and then in the fourth quarter, he had a smile on his face. I don't know if I could have a smile on my face in the midst of a beatdown as ugly as that was. I mean, and it seemed like there were several Cowboys players when the whistle was blown and they were talking to the other Green Bay Packer guys, they were like smiling. It did not seem like they were angry.
They said something early on. They said something, the announcers. They said that Matt LaFleur, who, by the way, is a legit coach. Matt LaFleur is, Matt LaFleur is legit. His assistants, who all got rides, off of Aaron Rodgers and all of that stuff, the Nathaniel Hackett's who bombed out, or the Luke Getzes in Chicago who bombed out, all of these guys, they're not the real deal. LaFleur is the real deal in Green Bay. He is going to be there for the next 10 years if he wants. He's young. He's got the youngest team in the NFL playing like the best team in the NFC in only their second year of truly being together. That guy's legit. He out-coached Mike McCarthy at every level today. And Mike McCarthy, does the man have no pride? This is his former team coming into town to his house where they've been undefeated.
Again, I'm shocked at the outcome. I don't think anybody saw Green Bay putting their backup quarterback in the fourth quarter. I mean, granted, they pulled him and they put Love back in after it started to get a little, some junk points. But
they got a little cocky a little bit early.
It just seemed. I don't know what to make of this. It just seemed like that they were tight. They did not appear to be ready to play. They weren't angry. I mean, I think the first drive when Green Bay went down and just drove the ball down the field methodically and scored that touchdown, I just don't think they ever recovered from that.
It's like they were shocked. It's like they were so used to being the dominant team on that field in that place with those fans that it's what they said before the game. That's it. I wanted to go back to that. So the announcer said Matt LaFleur knows that as the 7th seed coming in here to play a team that has never lost, they got nothing to lose, and they're just going to chuck it from the beginning. And that's what they did. Matt LaFleur apparently told the announcers exactly what he was going to do, because what is the most dangerous animal? An animal with nothing to lose, an animal that is cornered, an animal that feels it's going to lose the fight. That's what the Packers were. And they came in there, and the Dallas Cowboys were not prepared for it. It's like this happens with the Cowboys every year. I'm getting back on my soapbox. The Cowboys anoint themselves champions months before the playoffs. And these fans, us, the collective Dallas Cowboy Nation, we don't do anything to tamp that down. The local media does nothing to tamp that down. I used to know some Dallas Cowboys. You knew some Dallas Cowboys. They walked around this town. It didn't matter if they were starters and names. If they were Dallas Cowboys, every door was open for them. Every bar tab was comped for them. Everything was, there's a Cowboy here. Nobody else does that. That doesn't happen in Chicago or in New York. They can't go out in those cities when they're losing games because the fans are brutal to them. In this town, Dallas Cowboys are saints. Even when they're 4-10, this town still gets behind them. They fill this team with this vacant arrogance. And this team comes out in the playoffs with all the hype. There wasn't a guy on the planet who took the Packers to beat the Cowboys today. Not a serious bettor. There was no serious guy setting a line thing. That's what the Cowboys believe. They believe the hype, and it happens year in and year out, going on 26 years now.
Well, I think the other thing that you have to say is, all right.
I'm pissed. So.
Well, I'm likewise, but I think the other thing that you've got to say at this point is, okay, Dak had a great regular season, I would say, after a interception-filled season the year before. But tell me the difference between this Dak in the playoffs in previous years. It's the same Dak in the playoffs. There is not a different Dak that I've seen in a playoff game, and that makes me wonder, is he really that guy? Or when it gets deep and the water gets, tough to swim in, is he the guy that throws up the interceptions?
I'm not a Dak apologist. I'm not a Dak fanboy. But I think Dak can win on any good team in this league. I think can Dak win a Super Bowl? Without a doubt. When that guy flashes at the highest level that we've seen in this league. Hell, until about halftime today, Dak was talked about as the leading MVP candidate. Oh, Dak Prescott. That's changed. That's what we do to these players. We fill them with hype and they believe it. I don't think that it was Dak's fault today. Yes, he threw 2 bad picks early that got the game out of hand. But again, the second one, I blame his receivers.
But when have we seen him in a playoff game?
Well, I can't
stand out.
I can't push back on that. You're absolutely right. We've never seen him ball out in the playoffs. We've seen him ball out on Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Well, and we see him ball out when they're up by 2 touchdowns or they're up by 3 touchdowns, and it just seems like it gets progressively better for the Cowboys. Like if the Cowboys are blowing somebody out, Dak is playing well. But if the Cowboys are in the weeds, I don't know that Dak is your comeback quarterback. He just does not appear to me to be the guy that's going to make the difference in that close game. I mean, I'll go back to the Niners game years ago when he made that, I'm going to run the ball. There's just some decisions that he makes.
I think Dak needs to go
at key points in the game that he's a problem.
I think Dak needs to go. I think Dak needs to change the scenery. I think that it's in his best interest to get out of this town now because I believe that he is going to be blamed unnecessarily for everything that happened to the Cowboys today. And I don't think it's Dak's fault. I think it is institutional, and we can get into that in a little bit. It's institutional at the level of Jerry Jones. I think it's coaching. I think Mike McCarthy has been a bad coach since 2010. I mean, now again, I'm going back to my, Bears hatred of the Green Bay Packers, but that dude was tripping over his own dick for 5 years before the Green Bay Packers finally got rid of him. He's been cooked, in my opinion, for years, but he's a name, and Jerry Jones loves a shiny name, so he resurrected that guy. Today they're talking about if something were to happen to Mike McCarthy, he's going to find himself another head coaching job. What, are you insane? He's not going to find himself another head coaching job unless there's another guy dumb like Jerry Jones out there.
I think he will.
No, this is I think
they're going to.
No, come on, man.
The Cowboys have had 12 wins for 3 seasons in a row.
We don't. Yes, I agree. But also, one of the main things I think when people dissect and do the autopsy on the Cowboys is going to be that Mike McCarthy doesn't run a modern offense. Mike McCarthy still runs an Aaron Rodgers offense. That's a problem. Guys like Ben Johnson are out here reinventing offensive football. There are offensive-minded OCs waiting for their chance. I don't see anybody recycling Mike McCarthy again. I don't see anybody recycling Ron Rivera again. You got to be at the level of Bill Parcells or Bill Belichick, for that matter, to be able to get recycled yet again. And that's where I think the Cowboys are going.
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be the one thing I do want to see is I want to see the Jerry Jones interview. I want to hear what Jerry has to say.
Yeah, right. Okay. Hold on. Let's get into Jerry because I want to talk about that. But I did a little something. I put up a thread on the our friends over at the Freak 97.1 on their group listener page. I just said we're going live with a stream. I want to see. I want to hear what you think. What are your Cowboy thoughts? So let me give you some of these. Josh Graham says, San Francisco bragged about how they were going to beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. Again, they were wrong. Ha! All right. That's good. That's good. Beth Rowley says, at least we have our World Series. I'll live. Yeah, well, see, there you go. She's got to look at the positive there. That's very good. Incidentally, not only did I predict this Packers coming in here and whomping the Cowboys, I predicted the Rangers were going to win the World Series. But we'll move on. Paul Mendick says, there they go, being Cowboys. Kind of a common sentiment, right? Cowboy fans are now conditioned to this.
Well, because next season, at the beginning of the season, we're going to hear the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl. I mean, do we ever start out a season without the Cowboys being a Super Bowl contender?
No,
Never.
no, and that's the problem. That's
But that's the P.T. Barnum
Jerry
of
Jones.
Jerry
He cares
Jones. I
more.
mean, and that's why I'm saying I don't know how he is going to be able to spin this loss, the crashing of another 12-win season, without somebody paying the price. And whether that's Mike McCarthy or Dak Prescott, somebody is going to get blamed here. I just don't see Jerry taking the blame, and I don't see him going, yep, we're a couple years away from being a Super Bowl contender. I don't think he can handle that.
Hold on. I'm responding to a guy by the name of Brian Daniels who has the nerve to suggest, after I say we're going live with a stream, he says, or you could listen to the official post-game show on the entire Dallas Cowboys radio network on The Fan. I know that sounds horrible to you. Yes, Brian Daniel, it does sound horrible to me, because on 105.3 The Fan, you're not going to get any of this kind of conversation. What you'll get are excuses, you'll get pearl clutching, and you'll get ass kissing to Jerry Jones. So go ahead, Brian Daniel, enjoy your time over there on the official station of the Dallas Cowboys, you corporate shill.
I mean, it is true. You're not allowed to talk that negatively about the Cowboys if you're on that station.
And this is not a time for the corporate party line. This is a time to be angry. This is a time to be passionate and upset, because this has happened now for I'm trying to think. I was going to say the entire time that Amy Winehouse was alive. This has been going on.
I saw a stat that the longest streak to not play in an NFC championship game, Detroit Lions, Washington Commanders,
oh my goodness,
and then the Dallas Cowboys.
Of course, and we're conditioned to just accept it, because, pretty soon the hype train will start again, and Jerry will be like, I got some big plans, and free agency is going to pay some 40-year-old dude too much money to be half the man he was just 5 years ago. That's what's going to happen. Jerry Jones does not give a shit about winning. I mean, he wants to win, but he wants it to be easy. Like, he didn't want to actually spend money or anything like that to win. He doesn't want to actually be smart about it. What Jerry really cares about, and this is the hard truth that you ain't going to get on 105.3 The Fan, okay? What Jerry Jones really cares about is the Dallas Cowboys being the most valuable professional sports franchise in the world. And Jerry has figured out over the course of the last 20 years, as he's seen the Cowboy brand rise, and rise, what Jerry's figured out is it doesn't really matter if we win. All that matters is that everybody's talking about them Cowboys. And he's been able to do that. He's been able to do that by crawling up the ass of ESPN. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there like a cowboy show on ESPN? Because there should be. That's all he cares about. His big, beautiful stadium, his artwork on the wall. We're the Cowboys, America's team. They ain't been America's team since, I don't know, Quincy Jones or Quincy Carter. My point is this. Do you agree or disagree? Jerry Jones is more interested in keeping the Cowboys' evaluation as the most expensive team in all of professional sports, or does he want to win at all costs?
Oh, he's more interested in keeping them the most talked about team in professional sports.
Would Jerry Jones
and Stephen A. from ESPN is just got to be doubled up. I mean, I can't wait. First take tomorrow. Yeah, well, but he has taken them to task. He has publicly in the media went out and been a huge Cowboys hater and all this hype. And as much as people like him or hate him, I think he is one of the biggest Cowboy haters, although he'll say that he likes the Cowboys and the Joneses are his friends. He sees Jerry for what he is. I just, it amazes me that he can resell the same snake oil year after year after year and still get away with it.
I saw a funny tweet from somebody today who says, here's something else you won't get on 105.3. He says, he goes, I bet Jerry ain't been this mad since they integrated Arkansas schools. So a throwback to that great Jerry Jones picture where he's in the crowd when they're integrating the schools.
I know you watch the games fast forwarding, so you're behind time. So when you were watching, did you get a chance at halftime to watch Jimmy Johnson?
I did.
Did you
The old
did
man
you
was going
see
to drop
that?
dead. I thought he was going to drop dead right there.
Did you see the look in his eye?
Yeah.
The anger that he had, I mean, that guy in the locker room could have sent the Cowboys out. If he would have sent the Cowboys out at halftime with that speech, I would have been afraid if I was Green Bay, the Cowboys would have come back and won.
Yeah. You think the Walrus can do that?
No.
You think the Walrus can spiral?
But that's the difference. Jerry got rid of a guy that can bring fire to a room, even when he's broadcasting, even when he hasn't looked across an NFL locker room as the coach for as many years as Jimmy Johnson has been out of coaching. When I saw that guy, I was like, my God, I'm afraid if I'm an athlete for that guy to be my coach. Because I know if I screw up, it doesn't matter who I am. There's a very likely chance that I'm going to have my paycheck cut and I'm going to be on the bus out of Dallas. And I don't think with a lot of these coaches, they instill that fear. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. It's like in the third quarter, you see guys getting up and doing the, first down when they're down by 24 points. Or, you didn't beat that. You beat them one play. You got one first down. Look at the scoreboard. And you're smiling and you're doing a personal celebration. That to me is this newfangled, hey, I'm the star and I come before the team.
Yeah. It's all about self-glorification. Every fumble recovery results in like 11 members of the defense doing a dance routine in the end zone. I can't stand that. You're down 20 points. What are you celebrating?
And that's what it is. It's like you see a smile, and I get it, football is not life and death. Family's more important than that. But when you're on that football field for the 4 quarters that you're there, it is life and death. How you got to smile in that 60 minutes of when you're on the field or 3 hours as long as the game is, I just don't get it.
It's life and death for them. If they don't perform, they certainly ain't going to have the life of an NFL player, and that could lead to some really difficult times, so it is life and death for those players. As a fan, I understand that life goes on. Tomorrow we're all going to wake up. It's going to be freezing. We're going to go to work. Cowboys lost. Doesn't matter. Our kids still need dental bills paid. All of that stuff. Life does go on. But for these players, I would like it to be a little bit more, I was watching this thing. I was watching this thing with my kid. I try to brainwash him into, knowing the history of the teams that his dad likes and stuff. We're watching this documentary about Dick Butkus and Mike Ditka. And they talked about one of these guys. I don't know who it was. It was some player from today, but they were talking, or some more recent player. He was talking about Ditka, and they said, could you imagine Mike Ditka or Dick Butkus exchanging jerseys with the other team? I mean, could you imagine that? And then I told you, because of all this weather stuff, last night I happened to catch on YouTube a documentary about the Fog Bowl, which was a game between Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan, where the game was completely fogged out. After the game was over, Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka both, without even thinking, just turned and walked to the tunnel. They didn't come to the midfield and shake hands for the cameras. They fucking hated each other. And it was life or death to them, because on some level they had to have understood that for us, the regular guy, the working class Joe who counts the days until kickoff on Sunday, it does mean something. These players today, they mock our fandom. They mock our loyalty to them with all of this bullshit, this self-glorification. It's disgusting.
Do you know the other person I thought about today? And this is a new person in both your and my life. Yesterday, when we were at Pluckers, that Cowboys fan that was about to get into a fight with the Green Bay fan.
Yeah.
Imagine sitting there today and him having to take that Green Bay. I mean, how many fights were created today by Cowboy fans in bars just getting roused by Green Bay Packer
Yeah,
fans.
you know what we didn't see? We didn't see any fights on the field. We didn't see any humiliation on the part of the Cowboys. We didn't see any of them getting angry and taking cheap shots. We didn't see any of that. Now, that's not necessarily good when you're in a competitive game because you don't want guys ejected and you don't want flags. But when I'm watching a team and I'm wondering what's going to happen next year, and I see a team that is that heartless the entire game, they were humiliated. And I saw Cowboys hugging Packers on the field after the game. I don't know what you do with a team like that. I don't know what you do.
Do you think some of that has to do with the head, like, because the head coach is maybe not that guy? A little bit of it, they lose a little of that edge.
Yeah.
Because I always thought that about the Bills. I thought that about the Bills. I was like, when the Bills lost 4 Super Bowls, they were a good team. Obviously, to get to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row, you're a good team.
A dynasty, truly, in the AFC.
Right. But Marv Levy was not a mean guy. Like, he just seemed to me like he was a nice guy and he was a great coach, but he just didn't have that little edge.
I understand you having that feeling, but I can't accept you saying that he's great for, 16, 17, 18, 19 games of the year, but on the 20th game is when he can't be our coach anymore. Obviously, Marv Levy got that team ready to win some big games over the years. So I think that's –
But do you think there's just some – like Jimmy Johnson, to me, when he beat the Cowboys, one of those years, and Switzer did it the other, that was a different attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, a different time. But yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, Mike McCarthy does not inspire greatness. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, does he inspire his players to go out there and punch somebody in the mouth for pride? And he doesn't. Mike McCarthy seems very much at this stage of his career to be a corporate head coach, a CEO type. I know he gets a lot of credit. Mike McCarthy took over play calling. Okay, great. That doesn't matter. Maybe he shouldn't. Maybe he should go back to being the CEO, and maybe they should have gotten an adequate replacement for Kellen Moore.
Well, this does feel like Cowboys therapy for me. I feel like I've unloaded all the anger that I've had.
Let me go back to our friends on the Freak listener page. Let's see here. Lance says, unprepared and unprofessional. They, somewhere up the line, Cowboys, lack the ability to remain focused. They always seem to feel like they are world beaters and can't put it on cruise control. They're utterly ridiculous. That is exactly what I say. They believe they are world beaters before the first snap. And maybe that's the kind of confidence that some people need. But unless you truly are a world beater, I don't know how you tap into that. Because at some point you can want to be a world beater, and then your name at the end of the day is Michael Pollard. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, I do think they went in feeling like, hey, we are unbeatable at home.
Yeah.
And
this game will be easy.
And from there,
worried about San Francisco, maybe worried about that. Looking downfield, is that?
I mean, I don't think. Well, I mean, you're not worried. You're looking way downfield because if you beat them, you're not playing San Fran next week. You're the 2 seed. San Fran's the 1 seed. I mean, San Fran's way in the rear view.
I got a question. I got a question for you. I'm just reminded of this now. Is it still Jason Garrett's fault? Is it still Jason Garrett's fault? Because he was the only reason that this team sucked in 4 consecutive postseasons.
But I think Mike McCarthy has made this a better team than Jason Garrett's team. It seemed like Jason Garrett's, we were fighting always somewhere around, 500.
Yeah, he also had an aging mediocre quarterback that somehow Jerry had tethered his cart to, and Tony Romo. So, McCarthy got Dak, who was a surprise. You don't expect your 5th pick to turn out to be that guy you give a contract like that to. But it's not all right. So let's talk now about what happens next. Okay. So we've covered the game. We're all angry about the game. The game was awful. So what happens next? Does Mike McCarthy get fired?
If you would ask me before the game, knowing that the Cowboys were going to lose, I would say no, he doesn't get fired. If you ask me now how the Cowboys lost, I think Jerry almost has to fire him or do something to change the narrative. And so, like, this is a game that is going to have consequences on somebody. It can't have consequences on the Joneses.
No, of
right?
course not. There's no personal responsibility whatsoever. And we'll get to them ghouls in a minute.
So I guess answering your question in long form, I do think that there are going to be changes. Are those changes going to be a coach? Yes. Is that going to be Mike McCarthy? I think there's a 50-50 chance it's him, but I do think somewhere in the coaching staff, they are going to make changes.
So, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's already assured. We know that Campbell's probably going to get another shot at a head coaching job somewhere.
No, Dan Quinn, you're saying.
Well, Campbell, what did I say? Campbell, that's right. Lions Campbell's about.
Yeah, because he's Lions Campbell, right. But I think, and in that, I think Jerry will find a way to maybe let him go and like, oh, well, you know, I don't know. Do you maybe get Belichick?
Well, that's the other part of my thing that I posted.
Because you need to improve the defense?
So let me show you. Here's what I posted. That is exactly what I believe is going to happen here. I think I said here, let me find it for you. My notifications.
But I think that could be like the domino effect, right?
Right.
Dan Quinn is like, okay, he's going to go. Jerry then comes out and he goes, well, you know, even though last week I said Mike McCarthy's job is safe, I didn't anticipate Dan Quinn leaving, one, or two, I didn't anticipate our defense getting smoked the way that they got smoked. So I get a 2-for-1 here. I bring in Bill Belichick. I shore up the defense, and Mike McCarthy becomes the casualty.
Well, yeah. Okay, I'll get back to the shoring up the defense because I think what you do is you have an opportunity to scapegoat Bill Belichick if he does come here. But here's the post that I put up. This was on the 11th. So 4 days ago, I said, I believe the Cowboys will lose this week to the Packers. When this happens, Mike McCarthy will be fired Monday morning. Bill Belichick will be in Dallas by Tuesday. Press conference will be held at the Star on Wednesday. And then I drew the connection to, we've seen this before. This is exactly what Bill Belichick, this is how the Bill Parcells situation came about. Bill, this, and why will Jerry do this? Is it because Bill Belichick is going to come in here and save this team? No, this will be a terrible hire. What Jerry Jones should be looking to hire is a guy like Ben Johnson, the OC in Detroit. That's who Jerry should be looking at. But that's not a glamour name that is going to get ESPN to talk about him every single morning for the next 9 months of offseason. You know what does that? You know what keeps the Cowboy narrative nationally fresh? Bill Belichick, because Jerry loves his big shiny thing. Look what I got. How about them Cowboys? Now, a lot of people are saying Bill Belichick will never come here. Bill Belichick won't come here because Jerry Jones will never give him control. And I am telling you, oh, shut up. Jerry Jones is looking at his mortality clock and thinking, how many more of these postseasons do I have? And Jerry will go all in. He will give total control to Bill Belichick. Could you imagine that story, that narrative on the Ticket or the Freak, that Bill Belichick wanted to come here, but Jerry wouldn't give him control? What, because Jerry thinks he knows more about football operations than Bill Belichick? See, Jerry doesn't want that. So I believe that Jerry will give Bill Belichick all of these things that he requires. And maybe we'll get 1 or 2 years of absolute dumpster fire football before, they finally move in the proper direction. But that's what I think Jerry will do, because the bigger story that stops people from talking about how terrible the Cowboys are and how they keep imploding and how Jerry Jones is the root of all the evil, the only thing that changes that narrative is Belichick to the Cowboys. And that's what Jerry does better than any other owner in pro sports.
Well, I mean, if you go back to Belichick, or not Belichick,
It's
excuse me.
what it's what he did with Belichick, because if you remember, he went through all of that Quincy Carter nonsense, and all of the I can't even Dave McGinn, who was the coach of the team, that he needed to change the narrative from Jerry is too old to do this, so he brought in Parcells, and suddenly the narrative has changed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The Parcells hire, in my mind, the duplicate of that was the McCarthy hire. It's like, hey, let me get a coach that has a Super Bowl, and let me bring him here, and I can change the narrative because I've got a coach that's won a Super Bowl. I mean, the Cowboy ship has not ever really been right since they let Jimmy Johnson go. Yeah, Barry Switzer won one Super Bowl with Jimmy's team.
Yeah.
But short of that, it was always, let me get somebody that, is going to be a mouthpiece for Jerry, and Jerry's going to run the team the way that Jerry wants to run it. He got Parcells. Parcells made the media check up a little bit on that, and like, how much control was Bill going to have? Was he now in charge of the team and Jerry wasn't?
Jerry's the
and then
Jerry will promise Bill, be it Parcells or Belichick, anything they want to hear in the moment, and then Jerry.
Right, and I think Jason Garrett was that, Jerry shill. Like, Jerry, he'd get there at we got to do better. Oh, it's on me. It's, about the way we play the game. I mean, you could just hit play on a Jason Garrett post-game interview after they lost, and it was the same canned speech, and I think the fans, I think the media, I think the media out of town, I think in other countries, the Cowboy followers, everybody was tired of that, and this McCarthy hire let Jerry silence that for a while.
He was able to reset. He was able to put the reset button for a while. He was able to reset a shiny brand name coach.
And that guy lasted for these 12 wins, but he has not been able to get them over the finish line in the playoffs. And so now I think it's either a Belichick going in and making the loss of Dan Quinn and Belichick kind of the 1-2, or does he figure out a way to salvage McCarthy and bring in some other defensive guy? And that's I don't know.
Yeah, well, okay. So I mean, who is a big name defensive coach? This is an offensive league. I mean, my team, the Bears, have a defensive head coach. Bill Belichick is a defensive head coach, but I'm hard pressed to find another defensive head coach in the NFL these days. They're almost always offensive coordinators from the McVay or Shanahan tree.
Wouldn't you think that maybe a Ron Rivera
in Dallas? Well,
he gets fired as the Commanders' head coach.
So
they pick him up and they plug him in.
Yeah.
And you've got essentially a guy that was a head coach for a long time against your NFC opponent. He knows the NFC.
Right.
Maybe him and McCarthy together are enough of a Band-Aid for Jerry to sell.
Okay, so that's interesting. So what you're asking Ron Rivera to become a defensive coordinator again. You're asking him to. Yeah. I don't think Ron Rivera will do that. See, here's what we're looking at with the Cowboys right now. A lot of coaches out there, a lot of dirtbag coaches. That means, guys that you don't want. But there are three whales. There are three whales out there: Belichick, Saban, and Carroll.
Saban's not coming.
I know. Yeah, I was going to go through them one by one. Saban is not. Saban already embarrassed himself in the NFL. He wants to golf and rest on being the better than Bear Bryant, right? That's what he wants. He wants people to remember him in the way that they remember Bear Bryant at Alabama, and maybe even a little bit greater. He doesn't want to do anything to sully that. And besides, he's old. He's done it. He doesn't need it. Pete Carroll's interesting. Pete Carroll is an interesting one because he's a shiny brand name too. And he seems like he would be the lesser Coca-Cola. Maybe he's the Pepsi if Jerry couldn't get the shiniest of objects, Bill Belichick, to come down here. I could see possibly Pete Carroll. But Ron Rivera, I don't see, and I love Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera is a former Chicago Bear, great 85 Bears. I love him. Chico, good old number 59 at linebacker. He's a badass. I love him, but he ain't Jerry. He ain't interesting. He ain't got a Super Bowl. He, you know what I mean? He won some games, and he's a decent mid-tier coach. But I think he was exposed at Washington.
Well, yeah, and I think he's not a head coach, but I think he's a good defensive coordinator that got to the head coach position because of the way that his defense is played. And I think if you're going to lose a Dan Quinn and you're going to keep Mike McCarthy, you've got to bring in some brand recognition.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's just a thought. And plus, he's got experience with all the teams in the NFC twice a year.
What you're suggesting isn't completely out of the question. I mean, you mentioned Dan Quinn. That's what Dan Quinn did. Dan Quinn went from being a head coach down to a coordinator again, which is something that doesn't happen often. I think the difference between Dan Quinn and Ron Rivera is that Dan Quinn had a couple good years in Atlanta, right? And then he got fired. He got fired in Atlanta. Ron Rivera has established himself for 20 years as like a head coach in the NFL. I think that's a little bit different, but it's a possibility. You know,
if he wants a job.
He wants a job, and if he's hungry, yeah, I could see that. But also, I think there's got to be. Okay, so what is Jerry going to do, and what should Jerry do? What Jerry should do is go out there and comb every inch of the football landscape and find the absolute most interesting, best new, innovative defensive mind. But that's not what Jerry does. Jerry's going to go get Dave Wannstedt, as I saw jokingly mentioned. He can go out and get Ron Rivera. You know what I mean? He's going to go out there and get some recycled guy that has a name. Jerry's not big on. Look, I think Jerry felt that Kellen Moore let him down. I think Jerry might have bought into this whole newfangled offense and football kind of scheme if Kellen Moore had paid off for him, but he didn't.
Yeah, now Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator looking for a head coach in San Diego.
Yeah. There's a lot of places looking for a head coach. So do the Cowboys join those ranks? The Cowboys get into the mix with the San Diego Chargers. Who else? Las Vegas Raiders, who I know you think they're going to stick with Pierce. I don't know. That's another owner who I think is going to be dazzled by the shiny objects out there. And I think, the other name that we also, this is interesting. Let me float this to you, okay? Because here's another name that is out there but not being talked about yet. And this is the wild card for Jerry Jones. Are you ready? Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is under investigation by the NCAA. He's just coming off 2 consecutive years of beating Ohio State, which is the most important thing a coach has to do at Michigan, and he's delivered them a national championship. He's also, in recent weeks, hired an NFL agent. Jim Harbaugh could be coming to the NFL. Is that something that Jerry Jones might be dazzled by?
I think it would create enough talk.
And better talk, I would say, than Bill Belichick. Same level of buzz, being discussed on the ESPN and Fox morning shows. Same level of buzz. But I think for the franchise, Jim Harbaugh is the much better coach for this team than Bill Belichick.
I think for changing the narrative, for getting off the Cowboys got blown out by the Packers, and the Cowboys can't win a game, and haven't been to an NFC championship game, blah, 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 blah. I think something like Jim Harbaugh changes that. I think is a guy like Belichick without having all control.
Harbaugh's going to want control too, though, mind you.
But I think
is that he needs total control.
And this is the other thing. I don't see the Cowboys meshing with Belichick. Like the Cowboys team itself, there is so much flash and dazzle and showmanship. Like these players have a different mindset and a different personality than a Bill Belichick New England Patriot team. You don't see the guys on the New England Patriots doing the cowboy razzle dazzle. Like, it just does not appear to me that there's...
I'll tell you, man, the one guy who I know would come in here and change the softness, change the diva behavior, all of that is Jim Harbaugh. And I think he's the wild card. That's the one that I would advocate for. Look, I wanted him in Chicago. He was our quarterback. We drafted him. I wanted him there. We decided to stay with our defensive guy who seems like a nice enough man. I got no more of an opinion on him than that. But Harbaugh's not coming to the Bears. That Davis is going to make a play for him, and San Diego is going to make a play for him. And I believe that Jerry Jones, if he fires McCarthy tomorrow, as I think he will, I think Jerry's going to go after Harbaugh as well.
In the chat room, an interesting one they put out, Deion Sanders.
Yeah, I was just going to pop that one up because Neon Dion has been suggested. And let me tell you, I could see Jerry to talk about changes.
Oh yeah, I definitely could see that. That would be a very Patriot-like move. Mm-hmm. Dumping Belichick and picking Mayo.
Yeah.
And this now, in the Patriot, mm-hmm. Hey, we're replacing Belichick with one of our own.
Right.
Deion would be replacing him with one of your own.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I could see that.
Jerry would do that in a heartbeat. If he go, oh, that's a good idea. If he's listening right now, he's jotting that down in the back of his crazy limo with the giant bull horns. He's driving around a Cadillac with the giant bull horns on the.
He's probably got the chopper flying out to.
Here's why that's very Jerry Jones to bring in Deion Sanders as the next head coach, because Deion Sanders is a terrible head coach. Deion Sanders is not a good head coach. Anybody who watched Colorado's season, they win 3 games. And he's like John at the microphone, and all of a sudden every sports expert in the country is like, oh, Colorado's going to be great. Then they lose like 6 of their next 7. And the team is entering the transfer portal. Nobody wants. So, yes, that would make sense for Jerry Jones to bring Deion Sanders down here to completely ruin any semblance of cohesiveness or talent this team already has. Because that's something that needs to be mentioned too. This is a talented team. This Cowboys team is not a bunch of bums. They don't have a lot of offensive weapons outside of CeeDee Lamb, but their defense is good. Their line is wonderful. They've got parts. They've got a good young tight end. They need weapons on offense other than CeeDee Lamb.
So do you think, we're just throwing out wild shots, right?
So we're doing
possibilities.
We're dizzy from anger.
This year, Jerry, it appears like, has buried the hatchet with Jimmy Johnson.
Come on.
He entered him into the Ring of Honor.
You want that old man dead? What do you want? You want both those old men dead?
Well, I'm saying he entered him into the Ring of Honor. If you look at, if you needed a tape to see, does Jimmy still have it, even though he hasn't coached in years, what he did at halftime on Fox, that speech right there, that would scare any NFL player into play. I mean, Michael Strahan got down in his 3-point stance when he was hearing Jimmy, and he was fired up, and he was a New York Giant.
Oh, yeah. The old man was ready to go. Absolutely. So was Gronk. Gronk was in there. Terry Bradshaw even got a little bit of a shuffle in his stuff. No, look, that's great. And Jimmy Johnson's being checked into an emergency room right now with heart palpitations because he can't do that anymore. I like the idea. I think it's fun. And what a wonderful dream that would be for a revitalized Jimmy Johnson to come back and take over.
But wouldn't that be the Jerry? That would be the Jerry.
That would be great.
That would be P.T. Barnum at his best.
Yeah, I agree. But here's the problem. And I'm familiar with what Jimmy Johnson's daily life is like because as I've told you. Yeah, well, I listen to a sports show out of Chicago, and every week it's the Dave Wanstedt show, and Dave Wanstedt's best friend in the entire world is Jimmy Johnson, and Jimmy Johnson, they always call him in the middle of the show, and Jimmy's on his boat in the Florida Keys, and he's half 3 sheets to the wind every single time. I mean, Jimmy Johnson is loving life. He lives on his, he's got a mansion down there, but he lives on his boat. He goes to his boat every day. He pounds beers. And then on weekends, he gets flown first class or private, probably, to some
weekends, not even all the weekends. Some weekends he doesn't want to come. He stays on the boat.
To talk football.
Yeah.
And they pay him a king's ransom for it. Jimmy Johnson doesn't want the bullshit of having to be. He loves being – I think Jimmy Johnson loves being who Jimmy Johnson is now.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I think it's one of these situations. If Jerry knew that Jimmy would take the date, he'd have him in a minute. But his ego would not allow him for Jimmy to tell him no. But I think if Jerry could like pull one out of the hat, one that could save us, in terms of like everybody would be, oh, the Cowboys are back. They've not been the same team since Jimmy left. I mean, that is the final curtain call of Jerry.
All right, let me see here. More from the freak listeners. Ron Sizemore says, shit, been a fan since the Staubach days. God help me. I think I'm a Texans fan now. Oh, boy. Oh, yeah. And by the way, and that's something. Woo! And that's something Jerry Jones now late in life has to be cognizant of, which is that he's got another team in this state that seems to be catching a lot of interest. They got a sexy young quarterback. I mean, sexy in the football dollars way. They got a team down there that is exceeding expectations. A team. Let's talk about the Texans because we talked a little bit about that last night. We're talking about a team in the Houston Texans that were an absolute dumpster fire 1 year ago today. And what did they do yesterday? I mean,
well, and I think there's another thing that seems to be like throwing the old playbook out. You used to hear, we're going to give 3 years, 5 years at least, for a rebuild. Like if your team was in a rebuild, you couldn't think about anything until year 3. Look at the Packers. Look at the Texans. Look at the Lions. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are teams that have transitioned from bottom basement dwellers to the tops. Packers not there yet, but I mean, they just knocked off the number 2 seed.
Right. Yeah. They're the idea that it does take numerous years for a rebuild, or and here's the other thing that I think this is a big component to these rebuilds being turned around so quick. We just talked about the Texans. You mentioned the Packers. The idea that you draft a quarterback number 1 overall and then make him sit the bench between some mid-level veteran to learn is not done anymore. You would never risk a high draft pick by sending him to the slaughter. C.J. Stroud started from game 1. Trevor Lawrence started from game 1. Joe Burrow started from game 1. We don't do that anymore. There are no longer these conversations about, we got to sit and protect him and he's got to learn. However, it's not to say that the old way didn't work, because we just saw Jordan Love, a guy who had to sit for 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers. And when he was given the ball, look at what he's doing. We're talking about Green Bay being one of the quickest turnarounds ever.
And speaking of that, Cowboys are sitting Trey Lance. I mean, Trey Lance sitting back behind Dak, back behind the mid guy.
Whatever, Donovan.
The red hair. No.
I know, but there's a whole bunch of Bens and Codys, and there's a whole bunch of these Cowboys second stringers who I can't keep. Ben DiNizio, I don't know, whoever these guys are.
So I don't know. I
think Trey Lance is a bust. I think when Kyle Shanahan gives up a world to get you, and after 18 months goes, we'll trade him for a 4th, I think he's a bust.
Well, I'm not suggesting he's not a bust, but you have him sitting behind Dak Prescott.
Right.
Cooper Rush. There we go.
Here's another one too about Peter. About Trey Lance. Did you see Trey Lance get any significant playtime at all?
No.
If Mike McCarthy wasn't the head coach and you did have one of these young playmaker guys like a Mike, don't you think Trey Lance would have been out there in some gadget formation or doing?
I think you would have saw him in some gadget play at some point.
What we do know about Trey Lance is that he's a super athlete. We're not sure he can be a pocket passer in the NFL. We don't know that. But we know he's a super athlete. Anyone other than Mike McCarthy should have been able to figure out a way to utilize him on gadget or special plays. And I don't remember seeing any.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Look at the way that the Cleveland Browns used Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, and DTR.
Yeah.
I mean, he, and I think,
Well, but that was
well,
because they didn't have a Dak.
well, but DTR was still used as a gadget
Yeah.
play, similar to
Yes.
in New Orleans,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in
They got
in
a smart
that.
young coach there in Cleveland. That's
Mhm.
why they got a smart young guy who's got ideas. Mike McCarthy doesn't have any ideas. And kicking Kellen Moore out for having ideas. And by the way, Cowboy fans, you didn't do much to help that. Kellen Moore is a pretty good play caller. I know he got the axe there with Staley and the rest of the regime and whatever, but it was I can't think of, why can't I think of the quarterback there?
Who?
The quarterback in San Diego, the gunslinger.
Humphreys? Or
J-
Jason or what?
What?
Abraham?
He's a stud. Why
Yeah,
can't
I
I?
know. It's like it's
It's because
popped
I'm
out of
getting
my
old.
head now.
I'm getting old. Anyway, he went on and was talking about Kellen Moore, about how Kellen Moore is, innovative and all this kind of stuff. So the Cowboys had that, and they decided to go back to Mike McCarthy. Someone in the chat room is going to get Herb Jet said, "Thank you, Herbert."
Probably Herbert.
There you go. I'm getting older, man. I don't have room for all these names. Sometimes they pop out. Going back to the freak page, it says Mike McCarthy just got on the podium and blamed the defense. Never said he was outcoached. Philip Thornton says Jerry's greatest sales achievement is the belief of fans year after year, and y'all just keep buying it. I agree with Philip. That's the thing. The fans
It's the
have to get
same
angry.
snake oil every year.
The fans have to get angry. And it's got to just not be pearl clutching, oh, we hate Jerry. No, it's got to be like really vocal. It's got to be, I want to see t-shirts out there that say F Jerry Jones. Let's get those on every 10 person walking in the mall or the Galleria. We'll see then what happens. This guy is just, he's got to get out. He's got to get out. And I don't even know what the family structure of this team is like. Will Joneses sell the team, or will he just hand it down to Steven? And then now we got Steven for the next 40 years.
It's a family dynasty. It's going nowhere. I mean, the Joneses will own that team past our kids and our kids' kids.
Yeah, Steven's going to own it. Steven's going to want to be his dad and win a Super Bowl and do that whole thing. But maybe Steven's kids will be like, it's worth how much? $8 billion? Maybe Steven's kids will be the ones that get out. Because we're seeing that in Chicago. We've had the Hallis McCaskies since the formation of the NFL, and we've got the last one. She's 101 years old, and she's holding on to this team, and she's got a bunch of kids underneath her who are going to inherit this team, and they don't care about football. They want $6 billion for Grandpa's team, and they're going to sell it. I don't think that's going to happen for the Cowboys for another 40 years. I think Steven's going to muck these works up just as bad as his dad ever did. That's what we're looking at.
Well, it's just, I don't even know. What is Monday going to look like?
Tomorrow. Yeah. Well, it's going to be a great day for sports talk radio. I know everybody's going to be like, it's better when they win. Nah, it's going to be a really fiery sports radio tomorrow. And even non-sports stations. I'm sure the Freak is going to be all up in arms tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just don't. I can't. I mean, it's almost like you think about what happened and you're like, no, that couldn't have happened, and then you're like, it did. It really did. They got their ass handed to them.
And I want to say that I was shocked, but I wasn't. I mean, I predicted it. I knew how good the Packers were, and I knew how fired up they were, and I just know how lackadaisical and self-important the Cowboys always seem, and that's what happens. This was supposed to be a cakewalk for the Dallas Cowboys, and they got their asses handed to them by the youngest team in the NFL. That's what the Green Bay Packers are, the youngest team in the NFL.
And that's, unfortunately, Peter, that's not the case tomorrow. We will not be filming.
Oh, yeah. No, we're not. We are not. We were supposed to, and I mentioned that a couple of times last week. But no, we will not be filling it on the morning show tomorrow on the Freak. But thank you for mentioning it. Appreciate you.
And do turn in and listen to the Downbeat. Those guys are awesome.
Brady Kemp says on the Listener Freak page, Brady Kemp says, Dak proved himself as the best quarterback on the field today. Not only did he lead the Cowboys in TD passes today, but he was also the Packers' second leading quarterback in TD passes. That's true.
That's true.
That is very true. Dak did lead. I mean, hey, we got to count garbage time touchdowns against second and third string defensive players, right? They'll be in his stats. He'll get paid on those touchdowns at some point in his career.
Oh God, man, I don't know. I can't. I'll tell you, it'll be a rough day for me if the Bills lose tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what you're looking at. You got to, well, they won't. Well, they won't.
I don't know, but it would be just as shocking
What are you
if
gonna lose
they
to
got beat by Pittsburgh.
with Trubisky starting? they're gonna run Trubisky out, your former backup who knows your defense, who knows the way the defense schemes, because that is an advantage. That their quarterback could be a guy who practiced against your defense a lot.
God, that would just if the Cowboys go down and the Bills, if both number twos go down to number sevens,
and
that, and this is the first time in number seven. This is the first time in number 7 is won in this new format too. That was another thing today.
Hold on, who is starting tomorrow? They got.
It's not Trubisky.
I don't know.
No.
Who's starting for the Pittsburgh?
It's that guy, Mason
Rudolph.
Rudolph.
Yeah, the order here, Mason Rudolph. Isn't he the guy that took his helmet off and swung it at some dude? James Harrison, wasn't that? How long has Mason Rudolph been playing in the NFL for 20 years? It seems like he has, and he's never been.
He's never really. I mean, this is actually his deepest. Well, starting what could be his deepest run.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to get there. I mean,
he's having his Joe Flacco.
That's the thing. If you're a Bills fan, you know somewhere, somehow, it is going to end ugly. You just don't know what week that's going to occur in. And I'm just hoping it's not tomorrow. I don't know that I could take it. I don't know that I could take both of my teams, AFC Bills, NFC Cowboys, both number 2, getting broomed out by number 7.
Yeah, I don't think you got to worry about that. You're playing at home, huh?
Yeah, well,
you always had to spend an extra night in a hotel room. They can't.
Everybody's saying, I mean, the Bills got the same thing going on at home as the Cowboys do here. I mean, it all tracks the same line.
Our buddy Aaron says he will be feeling like me after the Finns and Cowboys. Aaron's a big Dolphins fan. He had a bad one last night, and then he followed it up with an even worse one tonight. He's, his team of his heart is I think the Finns, but he's born and raised here in Dallas, so he's always been a Cowboys fan too. Hey, whatever. You guys all probably laughed at me and my Bear fandom all year, but guess what? Your seasons are over. And you don't have what we have in the draft. We've got the number 1 pick. So we at least have hope to traffic in. I don't know about the Finns. I don't know about I don't think you're gonna be in this position. I think the Bills are gonna win tomorrow. My Super Bowl pick, by the way, stands. I think I told you this last night. My teams I think are gonna be in the Super Bowl are the Packers and the Ravens. And I think the Ravens are gonna win. And I'm sorry. Because I know that's got to hurt you at some point.
No, I mean, I think it's there's a really good chance it's the Ravens, but
that defense just looks unbelievable. That whole team is playing, and Lamar Jackson just seems like, after what he went through in the offseason with them saying we don't know if you're worth it. I mean, he's playing out of his skull.
And I don't need an agent.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. All right. That's going to do it. Once again, E, thank you for hanging out here.
And thank everybody in the chat. It was really nice, all these people getting on.
The Dallas Cowboys were humiliated by the Green Bay Packers, as I predicted. Not proudly. I have to deal with the heartbroken 14-year-old now, but I'm telling you, man, everybody was sleeping on the Packers. The Packers are a really good team. They got really good the last 6 weeks. And that's scary, ramping it up into the playoffs when you're shooting on all cylinders. Cowboys, again, I'll say this. I believe that Mike McCarthy will be fired tomorrow. I believe that Bill Belichick will be rumored to be in town on Tuesday. There will be a meeting at the Cowboys and Belichick on Wednesday, press conference Thursday. Bill Belichick is the new head coach of your Dallas Cowboys because Jerry freaking Jones can't help himself from doing stupid shit. Anything in closing? E?
I'm going to be interested to see Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
I'm going to be interested to see Jerry's response.
I'll tell you what
And
here's what I'm most interested in: going over and checking out the Cowboys thread, hashtag Cowboys or whatever on Twitter, and seeing all of the fights at AT&T Stadium. Because after every Cowboy game, you get the insane trash just throwing beers at each other and haymakers.
well, it's not like you can't find the cheeseheads. You know what I mean?
No. Very rare is it that another team is involved. This is always Cowboy on Cowboy fandom hate. This is always Cowboy fans beating up other Cowboy fans. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, if they're drunk enough, for sure.
All right.
This is actually turned into a good game, this Detroit
Okay, I'm
Rams
recording it, so I'm going to have to go back and watch. I'm going to watch it. You know how I do. I
forgot.
I illegally watch these games, so I have to watch them on a delay, and it's a whole thing, so I don't like them spoiled. All right, love you guys. See you tomorrow for the noon report. Thank you to E. Appreciate he being here. And that's it. These are my last few words. Cowboys beaten by the Green Bay Packers. It's like my last few words, but yet I got more words. We'll save them for tomorrow. Tomorrow, the high noon rant with me, Pugs Moran, all the days, headlines, hot topics, current events, trends, buzz, whatever it is people are talking about. I give it to you every day at 12 p.m. It might be Martin Luther King Day and a holiday for everybody else, but not for me and not for the news. So join me tomorrow for the high noon rant right here on the Radio Misfits, radiomisfits.com, podcast and live streaming network. Sleep well. Bye, everybody.